Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Zoom update, contract performance report update. This is Beth Taylor, our school support specialist, and Chris Loisel, the director, presenting on all of our cool updates that we made to the contract performance report. We're going to go over two sections of the report today. First, the academic section. We're going to review the contractual goals, provide an update on the format and explain that format to you, and then review each goal individually so that you can apply your knowledge that you learn in this video to your own CPR. We're also then going to move to the financial section of the contract performance report, where we'll review the Charter Schools Office fiscal oversight process. We're going to take a look at the format updates and review each of the financial health indicators. We'll start with Beth.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, if you take a look on page 4 and 5 in your contract performance report, you will see all of the targets that need to be met for academic growth and for academic achievement. If you take a look, you will see that they are laid out with the targets, the measures, and the metric. Now, none of your contractual goals have changed since the previous years. The only thing that you will notice is that we have given an updated, fresh look to the different charts and graphs in the following pages. Okay, so our academic updates that we have in this section. Your contractual goals are posed as questions and located directly above each chart or graph. The reasoning behind this is we wanted to have you stop from having to flip back and forth when you look at the goal and then find the graph that coincides with it. This should make it easier for you to stay on one page at a time. You'll also notice that throughout not only the academic section, but all of our areas that we have come up with a consistent color coding for subject areas and results. Along with that, all of our graphs and charts will have labeled targets. And our charts represent the most current available data. The index goals will always fall 1 year behind due to the state release dates. And you will see that in some of the upcoming slides. And the CSO will use this CPR data to assign each academy an academic tier level of support. And you should have all received your tier levels, and those will be used to, if you were at tier 1 or 2, you would not have had to worry about doing anything at this point. If you're a tier 3 or 4, we'll be contacting you to set up an academic monitoring plan. Okay, so let's take a look at the consistent color coding we have in place. There's 3 parts to this. The first part is the support designation index. And you will notice that this does follow the same color coding as you would find, for example, on an NWEA report. Blue marks that you've exceeded your target. Green is meets. Yellow is approaching. And red is does not meet. For all subject areas here that we're looking at, ELA will always be in orange and math will always be in light blue. And then as far as your results, we have come up with a circle graph, affectionately known as donuts around here. And once you have looked at what the goal is, right below it, this should help be an easy identifier on if you had met your goal or not. And so you will see here the outside of the circle will have the light color, the designation of math or ELA. Inside, you'll be able to see if you've met that target or not, along with a number. So these are the 3 ways that we are trying to be as consistent as possible for you while you're looking at our charts. All right, let's take a look at our goals. As you know, you have 2 main goals, growth goals and achievement goals. Under the growth goal, there are 3 areas that we are looking for. And the first one is the school meeting state designation expectations as set forth by the state and federal accountability systems. Now, due to MDE's release timeline, this data will always fall a year behind all the other data in the CPR. But the CSO will take progress trend into account while assigning tier levels of support. Once this score becomes available, the CSO will update the information in Epicenter to then evaluate if contractual goals were met. We use the metric of the MySchool data, the Growth Accountability Index score. And for all academies, the target is 50%. This will be found on page 9 of your CPR. The picture that you see here shows the question written in black, bolded at the top. You'll then see the trend. If you notice here, the trend is blue, and that means it's exceeding. The target was 50%. Okay, so for the second goal here, you'll notice we have attached growth goal number 3. The reason is this is the second piece on CPR page 9. It just, as far as the layout is concerned, we put 1 and 3 on one page. And then you'll notice growth goal number 2 is on the following 2 pages. So growth goal number 3 says, are students making sufficient yearly academic growth to increase proficiency? Again, we're using, you can see right in the title, we're going to use MSTEP PSAT 8 in ELA and math. And the goal here is that your students are growing 3%. So at the top, you will see the question in black bolded. Right underneath it, you will see 2 circles, one for ELA and one for math. You can see that this academy did not meet their ELA proficiency, but they are approaching in their math proficiency growth. And you'll see at the top, we give you a chart that shows you how it's working for each grade level, how each grade level is scoring. Below that, you will see the proficiency trend. The reason that we add this trend for you to see is not only to see your trend data, but so you can see how we make the target for you. And that is 3% plus the average of the prior 2 years. So if we are looking at this chart, and if you are looking at math, for example, you will see that if you look at years 22 and 23, and you take the average of those 2, it would be 26 plus 22 would give you an average of 24. We would add 3% to that. So that's where you're getting the target of 27. This academy has scored a 25% for 2024. Therefore, if you look at the metrics back on page 4, you would see that the difference there puts this academy at approaching. For growth goal number 2, this falls on page 10 and 11 of your CPR. You will see page 10 is the first box in orange, and page 11 is the math score in blue. Now, what we're doing is we are using a weighted average of students per grade and the NWEA standard conditional growth percentile. We calculate how your students are growing compared to their peers around the nation in reading and math. All academies have the same target here of 50th percentile. So in this case, we're looking at these 2 scores. The academy here would be meeting its goal, its target in ELA, and exceeding its target in math. We've also included at the bottom some more trend data information for you. For grades 2 through 8, achievement goals. So now we're moving on to the second set of goals. These would be the 3 targets in this area. Goal number 1 is the school meeting the state designation expectations as set forth by state and federal accountability systems overall? We're using the My School data, and the target for all academies here is 45%. This is found on page 12. And again, just like the growth goal number 1, due to the MDE's release timeline, this data will always fall a year behind, and the CSO will take the progress trend into account when assigning tier levels of support. Once the score becomes available, the CSO will update the information in Epicenter to then evaluate if contractual goals were met.
Beth, how is the accountability index determined with schools that have multiple buildings?
That's a wonderful question, Chris. Because the state does not give us a district accountability index score, what we are doing is we are taking both. If you have multiple sites, multiple schools, we will take an average of the 2 schools. Keeping in mind too, that we are using this data to help us identify the areas of support for your academies. Once we have all of our scores in, that's when we'll look on if you have met your contractual goals. And what I mean by that is we're still currently waiting on the index scores, and we're hoping to have them in the next couple weeks. Under achievement goal number 2, our students achieving proficiency on a nationally normed assessment. We use the NWEA map in ELA and math. All academies have the same target of 50%. This is found on page 12. So when we look at this, we look at, we've split it up by grade levels, but we look at the all category after grade 8. Those numbers, so ELA is 36, it should correlate with the 36 yellow approaching designation, and the 28 from the math, right from that chart, should go into the circle graph showing does not meet for this specific academy. One thing you will notice though, if you have on your graphs or in your circle bars or circle graphs there, greater than or equal to 20 or less than or equal to 20, any kind of symbol like that is due to FERPA rules. The CSO is not able to publish identifiable student data. We can show your academy's overall results, though, using the color designation. Your individual academies do have that information that you can use while working with your students to close your gaps, though. Finally here for grades 2 through 8, achievement goal number 3. Are students performing well on state examinations in comparison to the students in schools they might otherwise attend? Those would be called their CRD or their composite resident district. We do get many questions on how a CRD is created or where we get the information for that. We get the information based on the pupil enrollment submitted to CEPI via MSDS in the fall of each academic year. And in order to then calculate, we take those percentages, and you will see at the bottom of this page on the left, you'll see districts in which your students live in. This specific school that we pulled the picture from, you'll see there are 4 school areas that we pull from. For this school, we take those percentages and we create a composite district. We take their scores to compare with your scores. You'll see the CRD will need to be, the target is 3% above. So you will see on those gray lines where the CRD is compared to where your school is. We use the overall at the very end to compare, but we do break this out for you by grade level, so you can use that data if you would like. You'll also see a green line. That green line is comparing how your school and the CRD is doing compared to the state. We do not use that though for any kind of target for your contractual goals. When we start to look at grades 9 through 10, there are 3 goals for those academies that have high schools. The first one is, are students making sufficient academic growth to achieve proficiency? We do use the SAT, evidence-based reading and writing, and math. In fact, the SAT scores are used for all 3 of your 9 through 12 goals. In this first goal, the first target is 3% growth increase for all students. So again, due to those FERPA rules, you might see where you can't see a specific number. However, we do designate it with the color coding for you. So in this case, the SAT ELA is green, which means they met their target here, but in math, they did not. So the target is the current year's SAT results minus the average of year 1 plus 2 plus 3%. For goal number 2 under achievement, are students performing well on state examinations in comparison to students in the schools they might otherwise attend? So this would be their CRD. Similar to our elementary, we've calculated the same way, but we are only looking at our 11th grade because that is where our SAT results are. We do give you 9th and 10th for the PSAT. We give you their results, but we're only really measuring for your contractual information, the 11th grade goals. So in this case, there was a target of 53% for ELA. The Academy had a 59%, which meant that they met their goal. In math, the target was 26. They had a score that we could not share due to FERPA, but they did not meet. And goal number 3, are students performing well on state examinations in relation to the benchmark standard? Again, we're using the SAT. We have 2 targets that all academies adhere to, and that is 50% target for ELA or evidence-based reading and writing, and 40% for math. You'll see we've added a target there, a target line for you to see how your academy does compared to the target. We are focused on the last bar under 2024, the darkest bar. So 55% for the SAT in evidence-based reading and writing, and 14% for math. However, we do give you the other information for the PSATs of that year, so that way you can look at that when you are creating interventions and such. Okay, so something new that we have this year is an academic dashboard. This is reported in Epicenter, but this is something we are using up here at the CSO office to look at trends of how your school is doing in all of your academic goals. And this will help us when we decide your tier levels for support. So we would take, I provided a screenshot here, obviously, of more goals in this. But as you're looking, we would count up how many red fall in the category of the year. And if you have no more than 2, and if you have a high school no more than 4 does not meet, then you would be considered an academy that exceeds. So you would be a tier 1. If you have 3 or 4 does not meet and up to 7 with a high school, you would be considered a tier 2, which means you would be meeting your levels of support right now. For approaching or a tier 3, you would have 5 reds or 8 to 10 reds if you have a high school. And then does not meet would be if you're in a 2 through 8 school with 6 plus does not meet, or 10 plus with a high school, along with if you have an ATS, CSI, or partnership designation, that will come into play as well. So again, these are just to give us an idea of which academies need our support. But as you notice in this screenshot, you will notice there are 2 sections that aren't filled in yet. And one is the MDE support category, and the other one that you can see right now is the school growth index. Once we have those scores from MDE, what we will do is we will look to see if your academy has actually met their contractual goals. And if so, and you will be receiving a letter from us as well with the outcome.
And that concludes the academic portion of the CPR. Now we'll review the new financial section of the CPR. That can be found on page 16 of your CPR. So the first thing we need to talk about a little bit is contractual requirements, fiscal contractual requirements for your school versus just an oversight process that we use. So contractually, your school is required to not approve or operate under a deficit budget. And that means that we provide an oversight model that identifies your school well ahead of time prior to getting to a deficit situation. So we have a process where we identify your school based on certain indicators, support indicators that we use to help us evaluate the financial health of your school. And then we place your school depending upon how you do on these indicators. We place your school in one of four categories. One, either you're a new school and you're being treated as a new school and monitored differently because it takes time to build a fund balance. It takes time to get enough cash available to ensure that you have an accumulated amount of cash to pay bills on a regular basis. It takes time to pay down debt if you've borrowed debt to finance the improvements on a building, for instance. So a new school is looked at quite a bit differently. And we use new school category for the first 2 years of a school's existence. Then once you get out of a new school category, we identify you as either fiscally stable, and that's when you are only missing one of the primary key KPIs, or you're meeting all of your KPIs, identified for review, and that is when you are not meeting two of the primary KPIs, or you're not meeting enrollment KPIs that we have, and I'll explain. Or it does not meet when you're not meeting at least three of the primary KPIs. And depending upon where the fiscal indicators show you at, will determine what the charter schools office does. If you fall unidentified for review or does not meet, you'll receive a notification from the charter schools office director and a request for a conversation about the situation so that I can gain further clarity. We at the charter schools office can gain further clarity on strategies that your school intends to put into place to improve or situations, maybe clarification on situations that your school is currently in that you feel aren't representative of a true fiscal risk. Then that's something that we would work with you on to understand better. So there'd be open lines of communication after that notification. The KPIs that we use include enrollment trends, the current ratio, days cash outstanding, fund balance trends, and the debt to asset ratio. So I used an example here, just this is a made-up school, but I wanted to show you these trends and trend graphs are located in your CPR. I believe they're on page 16. And I'll explain what each does and what it means now. So the current ratio trend, that tells us here at the CSO how much in current assets you have versus current liabilities. So the higher the number here, the better. And you don't want to be below 1 because 1 means you have exactly the same amount of current assets that you do in current liabilities. Now that's pretty much the base level that you want to be at, because that indicates that you have enough assets to pay down your current liabilities. If you fall below one, that means now you have more current liabilities than you do current assets. And that's an indication of financial stress or distress. If you have a higher number, in this case 1.6, that indicates you have 60% more in current assets than you do in current liabilities. That's financially healthy. The other area in short-term indicators we use is unrestricted days cash. Now, we've set a target of 59 days, which is the cap is 60 days. We'd like to see, just on a fiscally healthy note, 60 days of available cash on hand to pay for payroll and pay for other costs that you incur on a month-to-month basis. Having 60 days of available cash on hand is a good rule of thumb. This school has 129 available days cash on hand, which is very healthy. So these two current trends appear to be very good. The other area we look at is current enrollment. So in this case, the school dropped from, it looks like 190 to 150. Now, obviously, you're all aware that significant declines in enrollment could cause a pretty significant financial crisis for the school. So this is an identified area that we have a concern, and you can see this school did not meet our KPI for current year enrollment change because of this decline in enrollment. That's greater than 5%. When that happens, we identify that KPIs does not meet. We also have long-term fiscal indicators. So the first and foremost, that's probably most important, and I know you're all aware of this, fund balance trend. So we're looking at this fund balance. Number one, it's got to reach the minimum target of 5%. If your fund balance declines below 5%, you need a financial plan to improve your fund balance, and it's due to the state of Michigan. And that's also a target that we have, a minimum that we have as well. But the other thing we're looking at is this trend. In this case, the school's fund balance has been declining over the last 3 years, and it's approaching that low floor target of 5%. That's not good. It's good that it's still above 5%, but certainly this trend does not meet our expectations for a healthy fund balance, which we would like to see it stable or slightly increasing, depending upon the long-term strategy of the school. In this case, the school's enrollment by year, we look at 2 years projections for a school's enrollment, and we have this KPI called enrollment change over time. If we see 2 years worth of declines in enrollment, we've identified that as an area of potential financial weakness in the school. The goal here would be to figure out, what's happening. Is there new competition in the market? Are there other issues happening in the school? And what are we doing, or what is the school leadership and management company or board doing about mitigating that decline? Because obviously, over the course of time, if you have continuous enrollment declines, the school will eventually be in financial distress. And then the other area is debt to asset ratio. The higher level of debt you have, the less flexibility you have as a school, and the greater these enrollment declines can have on the financial condition of the school. The lower this debt to asset ratio is, that indicates there's a very low amount of debt to the amount of assets the school has. Our target is 0.9. So we want to see that you have, for every $1 in assets, you only have, the maximum you can have is 90 cents in debt in order to not get to a does not meet area. This school has, for every $1 in assets it only has 10 cents of debt. So it has a lot more flexibility to handle, short-term enrollment declines than a school that's basically stressed with too much debt. In this case, the school meets the debt to asset ratio. So when we are all done internally, we take a look at your final financial statements for the year, and we run this financial analysis, and we will determine based on our KPI criteria where your school falls in the KPIs, and we'll identify areas of weakness, and then we will code the school accordingly, and you'll receive this report, which describes exactly what we're evaluating, what question we're answering with this evaluation, and what the data is telling us, along with a letter from the CSO asking for a meeting if you've been identified for review or does not meet, asking for a meeting to explain or understand in further detail the situation and how you as school leaders or board members feel about it, and if there's strategies in place to perhaps turn these situations around or improve them in some meaningful way. So again, what'll end up happening is if you're in the yellow, identified for review or does not meet categories, you will have further conversation with the CSO who will reach out. I will reach out. The director will reach out to the school leaders and the board president and for that conversation so that I can understand better the situation that you're in, and perhaps move you from identified for review up to fiscally stable if we determine that the KPI isn't actually giving an indication of a fiscal hazard. The other direction could also happen. If we've identified your school for review and through conversation, it's clear that there's more strain and more financial stress on the school than what those KPIs indicate, you could move down to a does not meet category, and then further conversation will be had about what type of support that we may need to fund or provide on CSO side in order to help mitigate any major fiscal problems for your school. So that ends this webinar, and I hope that this was helpful for you to understand how to interpret the results of your CPRs. And if you have any questions, please reach out to either Beth or myself, Chris Loisel, and we would be glad to help. Thank you.